Smallhope and Pennyroyal.
Yes.
This is the first book. What motivated you to write the story?
Well, it was the usual thing. I was writing Bad Moon at the time, with preliminary notes for Time Police 6 as well. And when I should have been concentrating on those two books, obviously my brain wandered off and did other things. And I don't know if you remember when I started on about the Time Police, I just suddenly thought one day, how irritating must it be for the poor, hard-working Time Police with these idiots from St Mary screwing things up as fast as they can go. And I was just working away one day and I suddenly thought I had created two of the most disparate characters that I could possibly think of, you know, an aristocrat and thug stroke butler. How would they meet? And once that thought had crossed my mind, there was just no holding it. So I emailed Frankie, my lovely editor at Headline, and said, how do you fancy a short story about how Smallhope and Pennyroyal met? And she was wildly excited and said, oh yes, that would be lovely. And I wrote it in about 4 or 5 days actually, and then I thought, well, what happened next? So I wrote a bit more, and then I got hold of Frankie again and said, it's going to be quite a long short story. How do you feel about 30,000 words? And she said, oh no, that's fine. So I went at it a little bit more, and one thing led to another, as it frequently does. And I rang her up and said, I've just passed the 60,000 mark. And she said, it's not a problem, we'll call it a novella. Great, okay. So I wrote and wrote for a little while longer, and got hold of her and said, we're approaching 90,000 words. And there was a bit of a silence at the other end, and then she said, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. And when I eventually sent the book off, it was the world's longest short story ever. I think it's between 120 and 130,000 words, actually. I just couldn't stop. And once the characters had really got under my skin, and they did really get under my skin, it was so exciting and such fun to write. There is no realism in the story. Most of it is completely impossible. You just have to suspend disbelief and go with the flow, because the author got completely carried away. I hope you enjoy it. It was huge fun to write, and I hadn't actually been that excited about something new since I wrote Just One Damn Thing, actually. It was just like embarking on a whole new thing all over again. I mean, I love all my books, but this one's a little bit special, and there will be stroking throughout the evening. Just live with it. And please feel free to stroke your own, or possibly your neighbour's.
Adventures of Smallhope and Pennyroyal be interwoven with those of St Mary's and the Time Police, or are they completely separate?
In this book, I had a framework, an existing framework of stories from St Mary's and the Time Police that I had to insert them into and weave the story around it. Now I've brought them up to date, and everybody, all 3 series, are more or less now at the same point. Slip of the tongue. So yes, they will interweave, but I do feel that they are entitled to their own identity as well. So there will be passing references, and there's no promising that they won't appear in St Mary's and Time Police books as well, probably when you least expect it. You know, Pennyroyal stepping out of the shadows wearing one of his least encouraging expressions. It's not something anybody wants to see, really. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And I have to say, I have no clear idea where this is going at all, so anything could happen.
The great thing is it was just such fun to write.
It was, I couldn't stop. And of course, Bad Moon suffered occasionally. But that's coming out next year, that's all completed. And now I've got to pretend that everything's going well with Time Police 6, and I'm completely on schedule, and there aren't any problems at all. So now I'm going to have to kill you all.
Do you have a favourite Smallhope and Pennyroyal?
It's interesting, when I started to write the stories, because most of it, not all of it, but most of it is in Smallhope's voice, and I'm female, so it's easy to identify with her, and she was a very easy character to write as well. She's down to earth, there's no self-pity, she sees clearly what has to be done, and she gets on and does it. And you'd think she would be my favourite of the two, but I think we all love a bad boy, don't we? So, yeah, at the moment, it is Pennyroyal. That could change, I don't know. I'm the author, I have the power, so we'll wait and see what happens.
Will we ever learn what Pennyroyal got up to in Butler School and how he earned his 12 diplomas?
Well, it was a bit of a joke, actually. Smallhope gets sent off to a very posh finishing school where she is just a troublemaker, and it's all completely wasted on her. And one of the things she struggles with is the module called floral art, in which she's supposed to arrange flowers and make beautiful things. And she fails floral art dismally, mostly because one of her exhibits is covered in bloodstains because she cut herself while she was doing it. Pennyroyal, meanwhile, is getting his education at the euphemistically named Butler School. He works very hard, does very well, comes out with 12 diplomas, one of which is in floral art. Smallhope is not incensed by this, but every now and then, usually as they're in the middle of a gunfight or something, she will turn round to him and say, "Seriously, floral art?" So I had a lot of fun with that. Pennyroyal is a man of mystery, and you will learn a little bit more about him, but I don't want to spoil things by saying too much. There will be clues and there will be little snippets every now and then, but I think he's always going to be pretty much a man of mystery. What he got up to at Butler School, I'll have to sit down and have a jolly good think with a bottle of wine. I can see we could have a bit of fun with that, actually. I mean, 12 diplomas, wow. And floral art as well. I think I listed some of them somewhere. I actually Googled Butler School. There are Butler schools, believe it or not. I don't just fling these books together, And there are things like diplomacy, concierge skills, hotel management, deportment, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So I picked 10 or 11 of the oldest ones that I could find, and Pennyroyal has diplomas in them. I haven't yet ventured into his own private apartment, so I'm not quite sure how that looks, but I can easily envisage a room full of gun cabinets where he keeps all his weapons on one wall, and his 12 diplomas proudly framed on another wall. I think that could be quite nice, actually. Yes.
On whose side do they bat? Are they for the goodies or the baddies?
They are on their own side. They have very strong morals. They have very strict rules to which they adhere. But they are on their own side, so sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. I don't think you could make them do anything that they didn't want to do, but they've got to want to do it if they're going to do it. They work for the Time Police. They help out at St Mary's occasionally. And of course they've gone off to work for Raymond Parish as well, and that's going to lead in all sorts of interesting directions. But at the end of the day, they're in it for the money, they're in it to be rich, but there is an incident in the book where they're asked to do something, and Smallhope has strong reservations about it, and you will recognise what it is when you get there, and I'm not saying any more.
Are the crown jewels safe now that Smallhope has her eye on them?
Well, and I know I've said this before, it was only supposed to be one book, just like One Damn Thing. And when I got to the end, I wrote the ending about the crown jewels, and I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to spoil it. And then immediately, of course, started thinking, oh, well, they could do this, they could do that. So the crown jewels may be on hold for a little while, they may not be, I haven't quite decided yet. And also, I've got to go to the Tower of London and actually check out the jewel room and see what's feasible and what isn't. And I have a strong suspicion that they're not going to let me look at the blueprints or the security system. So I'm going to have to make it all up as I go along, I'm afraid.
Will their adventures always involve jumping through time?
Well, I've got 2 time series. I've got St Mary's and I've got the Time Police. St Mary's, of course, approach it from the historical point of view, and the Time Police from the legal and illegal point of view. Yes, they will jump about in time, but I don't want it to be a duplicate of the other 2 series, so there will be skullduggery and all sorts of things happening that maybe are indirectly linked with time criminals. But I feel that gives me more flexibility and more leeway for them to have exotic adventures. But as I say, you know, it's the usual tale of failure to plan ahead. I've no idea where it's going and what's going to happen when they get there, so it's going to be interesting.
Certainly is. Have we seen the last of the evil sister-in-law, or Caroline Dyer?
She's too good not to at least mention in future. I'm not going to say, again, because some of you haven't read the book, but she's been neutralised. Pennyroyal took a hand, and when he neutralises somebody, they tend to stay neutralised. But I'm not sure that she won't reappear in some form or another. And I don't want to say any more because some of you can't possibly have read it yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But when you have a good character, you don't want to waste them, do you? So she might come back and be her nasty, spiteful self all over somebody else.
Will we see more of Smallhope and Pennyroyal in the future, or was this a standalone book?
At the moment, it's a standalone book. Because I do have to finish Time Police 6. I mean, I've really got to do that. I'm contracted to do it. After that, I don't know. I've got ideas for another Smallhope and Pennyroyal. Just ideas at the moment, don't get excited. I've got ideas for another Time Police book and St Mary's as well. And also for another Elizabeth Cage. So I've got enough ideas to take all my major series one book further forward. What order I'll do them in, I don't know.